Melochim, Perek Hey, Halacha Tes, and in the Rambam, also the taste of Yisrael l'chutz la'aretz, la'olam. It's forbidden for someone who lives in Eretz Yisrael to go out to l'chutz la'aretz forever. Let's take a look at the Peirush. Torah. The only reason you may leave is to study Torah, or Lisa Isha, to marry a wife, by lahatzam and akam, to save yourself from being killed by non-Jews. V'yaseh la'aretz. And he can come, he should return to Eretz Yisrael, and then he should go out for business. Avalishkoin, dwell b'chutz la'aretz, outside of Eretz Yisrael, also is forbidden on Ken Chazak Shom Harav, unless in Eretz Yisrael there's hunger. Hashanas Shava Dinachit and Vishnei Dinhu, until the value of wheat has gone out from the equivalency of 1 dinar to 2. It has doubled in price. When is that so? When there is money. And the food is expensive. But if the food is cheap, but there's no money, nothing for him to make his money from, of the protum and akis, and there's no money in the pocket, he's permitted to go out to any place where he can find profit. And even though it's permitted to go out, it's not midas chasidus to go out, even in these situations. The Machon Nesher who were the says they were two of the great men of the generation. They saw HaGodol, so they left because of the fast, the hunger, they were liable for the death penalty because of what they did, and they both died. If you go turn Torah, it's permitted. The Kesef Mishnah cites Avodah Zarah 13a. If he was a kohen, in order to judge, or to argue with goyim, that he has with them a legal proceeding, he becomes tummy in the land going outside of Eretz Yisrael, because the Halacha dictated that lands of outside of Eretz Yisrael should cause defilement. And in order to learn Torah, to marry a wife, he says even if in Eretz Yisrael there's someone to teach him, he can go to his master, because not everyone can learn from a certain specific individual. And even though in Eretz Yisrael they write down Machon, they can teach, and he can learn from them, and he might succeed. But his master is permitted to go from Eretz Yisrael and to save himself from goyim, because the Mishnah says that means even for his assets to go and against them in court. Also, Rambam in Hilchos Yesodei by morning says permits a kohen to become tamei in a place which has a grave has been plowed over, or an outside of Eretz Yisrael, for purpose of a mitzvah when there's no other way to go, because the tumah plowed over the field is drabonon. And he permits also to marry a woman or to learn Torah from his Rebbe, because not from everyone can you learn Torah. And also he can become Tamid Rabbanon, because the Tumah Chutz La'aretz is the land outside of Eretz Yisrael is rabbinically defiled. And Ketzad, what does this mean? A mourner that went in a field which was plowed over, everyone goes with him to console him because of the honor of the personage. And also you jump over the caskets of dead people to greet kings, even those of the non-Jews, to recognize the difference between kings of Israel and kings of non-Jews. Then when God will give us back His glory, we'll recognize the difference. It would seem that a kohen can become Tomei, a Tumah Rabbanon, for keeping the mitzvahs. But the Maram Kazes writes that he infers from the language only from Torah to marry a wife. Only for that is one permitted to leave Eretz Yisrael, not for other mitzvahs. The Rambam changed his language in morning from his language here. Here he doesn't write he should go back to Israel, and here he does write so. And there he writes at a time that there's no other way, and here he doesn't mention that. The Marash al-Ghazi infers to the language of the Rambam that he goes out for business, but certainly for mitzvahs he may do so. The Stei Chemet permits one to go out to pray on the graves of tzaddikim, and maybe it's a mitzvah that they should watch over us. This is Kol Ben Yefuna went to pray by the Ma'aras HaMachpelah, and he adds that's only if he does not have to cease from serving Hashem because of a mitzvah, because the service of Hashem is definitely precedes that of praying at the sites of holy tzaddikim. Not like those who go and spend many days of prayer and serving Hashem and lose it because they go. Certainly, if he's a Machon, it's not correct to do so. And he writes, God who is good should atone for us. He cites the Sefer Kol Yochel in his drushes. He questions if when there's no other woman to marry, or even if he can marry somebody else, but he wants a woman, a certain type, a woman who is outside of Eretz Yisrael. The Chemet is of the opinion that even in this situation, he may leave Eretz Yisrael, that he wants to marry the woman that he desires. And he brings this from Kibbutz Av Em. The Rambam says that the Halacha is that he wants to marry a certain wife, and his father says he shouldn't marry her. He's not obligated to listen to his father. There's no Kibbutz Av. Certainly, by leaving Eretz Yisrael, it's a question of the rights of the Rabbanon. Certainly, he can go out in order to marry her, even if he can marry another woman in Israel. And he cites that there are later commentaries where their son if the son cannot leave for whatever reason, if the father may leave to bring him a wife, because he's the one that's obligated to marry off his son. Or maybe it's only for the son himself to go out for his own wife. And he cites that Tosfos in Avodah Zarah 13a permitted him to go out to learn Torah or to marry a wife with condition he's coming back to Yisrael. But to go for other mitzvahs, it's forbidden in all instances. One has to emphasize that Tosfos was talking about Kohen because of Tumah. And he doesn't mention there how does this apply to a regular Jew, whether he's forbidden or not. The Chemed concludes that when he does not want to return, according to Tosfos, the Rambam is forbidden to go out in every instance. According to Marit, it's permitted to go out to learn Torah, but to marry a woman, it's only if he cannot find a proper woman in Eretz Yisrael. According to Tashbats, you're permitted to learn Torah only if he does not find somebody to learn from in Eretz Yisrael. And for Kibbutz Av Em, he may do so. When he wants to come back, the Marit permits even for a permissible reason, which the Rambam doesn't mention. One still has to question if the Rambam would permit one to go out to marry a wife when he doesn't find a wife in Eretz Yisrael, or even when he goes out to find a wife that's correct, still he wants a certain wife. You cannot forbid him to leave Eretz Yisrael. And everything the land, the Ramban says, we were commanded to inherit the earth because Baruch Hu gave us to our forefathers, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and we should not leave it by others, other nations, or leave it desolate. This is what it says: you shall give the land, and you shall dwell in it. For to you have I given in this land, and you shall inherit it. This is in Bamidbar 33, 53 through 54. And in the Peirush HaMeir, the Ramban says, according to my understanding, this is a mitzvah, a positive commandment that they should live in Eretz Yisrael because Hashem gave it to them, and they should not become disenchanted with the land of Hashem. And if a person will think to go and to conquer a different country, Shinar or Ashur, and others of the like, if he'll live there, and there he'll serve Hashem with Mitzvah Hashem, and you should not do so. What the Chacham said, Ksubis, that living in Eretz Yisrael, that it's forbidden to go out of it, and it's just like a woman who rebels against cohabiting with her husband, that she does not want to go up to Eretz Yisrael with her husband. So to a man, if he doesn't want to go with his wife, here is the source of this positive commandment. The Torah refers to it in many places. We find it in Dvarim 1, Posuk 5. Come and inherit the land, further and further. But Rashi is of the opinion that you should inherit the land is a promise, not a command to do so. And it says you shall inherit her from its dwellers, and then you shall live in it, and you'll be able to exist there. And if not, you won't be able to continue to exist there. In Satmar Rabbi's Sefer Vayoel Moshe, he's of the opinion, very simply so, that the Rambam opinions like Rashi, there's not a direct command to live in Eretz Yisrael, just a promise. Sefer HaMitzvahs, the Ramban, Nachmanides proves it's a commandment and not a promise. For what it says in Dvarim 1:21, Alei Roish, go up and inherit as God spoke to you. Do not be fearful and do not tremble. Do not tremble. And then it says, when God sent you from Kodesh Banea, saying, go up and inherit the land which I gave to you. And if you will not go up, it says, Moshe Rabbeinu says, you rebelled against the word of Hashem, and you did not have faith in Him, and you didn't listen to His injunction, His call. Therefore, in the Mishnah, the Soita, in the 8th chapter, Mishnah 6, calls the Chacham the fact of conquering Eretz Yisrael as a Melochim mitzvah, a war of command. We are commanded to do so. And so the Gemara in Soita 44b, Yudah, that the war of Yeshua to conquer Eretz Yisrael is called an obligation, and therefore the Melochim of David to wage war for spoils is called permissive. The Rambam also says that Muhammad Yeshua was an obligatory mitzvah, so it would seem that there is an obligation to conquer Eretz Yisrael. The Ramban continues, we do not make a mistake and say that we're talking of only the command to wage war against the 7 nations, and as it says, destroy all of them. That is not the case. And he points out that the war of Yeshua was a war of mitzvah, because it says, conquer Eretz Yisrael and inherit it. The mitzvah was not killing the 7 nations. He brings further proof, and he concludes, we have to conquer Eretz Yisrael in all the generations, and not only in the days of Yeshua. And I say that this mitzvah, that the Achomim are very outspoken with regard to it, is dwelling in Israel, until it says in Ksubas 110b, that everyone who went out, goes out of Eretz Yisrael and lives in outside of Eretz Yisrael, it's as if he's serving idols. As it says in Shmuel 1, chapter 26, Posuk 19, because we have been exiled from dwelling in the inheritance of Hashem, to say, go serve other gods. And all this outspokenness that they said it's a positive injunction. We were commanded to inherit the earth, Eretz Yisrael, and to dwell therein. And every individual of Yisrael is obligated, even in the time of the exile, as we find in the Sifri, Dvarim 12:29. Was an incident of Rav Yehuda ben Sera, Ma'atya ben Chorosh, Rav Hananya ben Achi, the son of the brother of Rav Yeshua, Rav Nosson, Shvei Yoitz and the Chutz Lords. They were going out overseas, and they came to a certain place, and they remembered that Yisrael, and they lifted up their eyes and they cried. They tore their garments, and they called that. They recited the Pasuk in Dvarim 17:14, and you shall inherit it and dwell therein. And furthermore it says, and you shall heed to do so. And this is the obligation of the dwelling, and they said the dwelling of Eretz Yisrael is equivalent to all of the mitzvahs. Hilchos Esther explains why the Rambam doesn't count it in the 613 mitzvahs, because the dwelling in Eretz Yisrael, inheriting Eretz Yisrael and dwelling therein, for the conquest of Eretz Yisrael and dwelling therein is only obligated in the days of Moshe, Yeshua, and David, until we were not exiled from Eretz Yisrael. But after we were exiled, this is not a commandment that pertains to us until Mashiach comes, because we were commanded, as we find in Ksubis 111a, they refer to the fact that we're not permitted to rebel against the nations of the world to take Eretz Yisrael with strength, based on shiur, chapter 2, Pasuk 7. I have made you take an oath, and it says 3 times their oath. 1, that we should not take Israel by strength. 2, we should not rebel against the nations of the world. And the nations of the world were also given an oath that they should not torment Klal Yisrael more than is permissible. Rahum also very strongly proclaimed the praise of living in Eretz Yisrael, and the Beis HaMikdash is existing. But today, there's no mitzvah to live there. And so Tosfos says in Ksubis 110b, another proof, it's not a commandment, but it says everyone who goes from Babel to Eretz Yisrael transgresses a positive commandment. It says in Yirmiyahu that you shall come to Babel and there you shall stay. If Eretz Yisrael was a mitzvah in all the times, how can a Navi contradict that which Moshe Rabbeinu said? Because we know a Navi cannot find a new mitzvah from the point that the Torah was closed. That the Chachamim tore their garments was because they were in torment on the destruction, and not because of Eretz Yisrael. Because if the mitzvah would be in effect even after the destruction, why did they cry and tear their garments? They could still do so by going back. Hilchos Esther says that this mitzvah does not have implementation after the destruction of the temple till Mashiach will come soon in our days. The Avnei Nezer questions this assumption of the Hilchos Esther. Says, how could the Rambam count Trumas and Maasros and Challah as a mitzvah which is for all generations, even though that they're not obligatory minatorah in our times? According to the Rambam, even in the days of Ezra, there was no obligation during the Second Temple to have Trumas and Maasros, the tithes, taken minatorah. That's Yisrael, because it's not in the today. Therefore, it's not a commandment that's throughout the generations. It must be that it's a mitzvah that's the mitzvah that's going to be in the days of Mashiach is considered a mitzvah of generations. Otherwise, why would the Rambam list it? What the Hilchos Esther says, how could it be that the Navi says you shall arrive in Babel and stay there? You can't leave from Eretz Yisrael to Babel. If there is a mitzvah to be in Eretz Yisrael even after the destruction, The Avnei Nezer answers according to the answer of the Rashbash that the going from Eretz Yisrael was only a preparation to the mitzvah. The actual mitzvah is dwelling in Eretz Yisrael. And he cites proof that somebody who swears not to go up to Eretz Yisrael is not considered, he's swearing to nullify a mitzvah. Avnei Nezer says even the commandment of the Navi, we shouldn't go from Bovel, does not contradict the mitzvahs of the Torah, because the going up is not the mitzvah, and there is if he swore not to go up, it would take effect the oath, because the Navi said one should not go up from Bovel. Rambam does not count the dwelling in Eretz Yisrael as among the mitzvahs, because it says you shall destroy them, and destroying them and dwelling in Eretz Yisrael are not two separate mitzvahs. The mitzvah of destroying them is in order that we should be able to dwell in Eretz Yisrael, like in the sixth Perik, that Yeshua sent letters to the people of Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Canaan at that time, that those who want to leave should leave. The Yegoshi took it, and they left. And Hachrim Tachrimim, the obligation to destroy them is only if they do not permit us to dwell in Eretz Yisrael. And even though that he counts this is one as an obligation, this dwelling in Eretz Yisrael is part of that mitzvah that he counts of destroying the seven nations. And he explains that the Rambam and the Ramban go according to their opinion with regard if you should count making the Oron and the Kaporos, the covering, as each one a separate mitzvah. According to the Rambam, it's a separate mitzvah, and Megillas Esther writes that the Oron was hidden and we'll have it in the future, and we will not have to make a new one. The Avnei Nezer is of the opinion that it is the same as Hachrim Tachrimu, that they are no longer there, and still it's counted there's no way of doing it any longer, and still it's counted in the count of mitzvahs. The Ma'ayin HaChochma answers similarly that for that reason the land and the Oren and the Kaporos are not considered a mitzvah, because the basic idea of the Beis HaMikdash was to receive the Oren and the Kaporos, as it says, make for me a Mikdash, and I shall dwell within it. So too, destroying the nations that are there and living in Eretz Yisrael, according to the Rambam, is one mitzvah that we were commanded to destroy them in order to exist in Eretz Yisrael. And since he counted destroying them in the count of mitzvahs, he did not count Eretz Yisrael. The Ramban is of the opinion that even though there's a mitzvah of making a temple, he also says you have to make the Oron and the Kaporos as a separate mitzvah, and so too here he counts them as two mitzvahs: destroy the seven nations and dwell in Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Yisrael Pilov, he was a grandson of the Kotzker Rebbe, and he wrote about Eretz Yisrael. The Avnei Nezer, the son-in-law of the Kotzker, write a short letter, and he explains to what it says in the pamphlet that there are many people purchasing land in Eretz Yisrael, and they will be able to live from that if it's correct to do so, and if you have to do so. And he says that dwelling in Eretz Yisrael today is a mitzvah, both according to the early commentaries and the later commentaries. And he goes and questions again, the Avnei Nezer does so, if it's an obligation today. And if we don't live in Eretz Yisrael, it's like you're not keeping the Torah. But the Trumas Hadeshen says that we are subject to the fact that we cannot live in Eretz Yisrael because we're given over there to other nations, and because of the wickedness of the Yishmaelim, and because of the difficulty of sustenance, we can't live there. The Avnei Nezer pushes off many times that this is there's no tradition with disregard, and the kingdom watches over the Ishmaelites, and there's only the difficulty of sustenance. But the Gedolei Torah that for sure if they would live in Eretz Yisrael, Klal Yisrael would support them. That was the whole concept of giving tzedakah of Rameir Balanes. He mentions that the middle tzedakah said one should not go up to Eretz Yisrael because there you'll have to come out to other people. And he says that there are those that even outside of Eretz Yisrael need to get receive sustenance from other, and also the very basic idea. I don't know if a continuous mitzvah, which is equivalent to all the mitzvahs, can be overcome by the fact that you'll have to be supported from others. And today you can travel quite freely. The Kuzari, the king of the Khuzars, asked, why don't the Jews go up to Eretz Yisrael? And the Chaver said that the king of Khuzar embarrassed me that I don't go up to Eretz Yisrael. But the Avnei Nezer argues we cannot go up to Eretz Yisrael, and we can't say that going up to Eretz Yisrael is something that the great men of Yisrael are mistaken that they don't do this mitzvah. The Tashbats and the Rashbash of the opinion, like the Rambam, the grandfather, that this is a mitzvah asay in a Torah. But they write, even according to the Rambam, who didn't count it as one of the 613 mitzvahs, it's definitely rabbinical. But it's very simply so in the eyes of the Rashbash, that since the Rambam did not count it, he is of the opinion that it's not a mitzvah d'oraisa. The Knesset HaGodol says that somebody who swears not to live in Eretz Yisrael, the shiur takes effect, because it's not a commandment that's specifically mentioned in the Torah. It's rabbinical. And he brings psukim that this is the opinion of the Rambam, and he didn't count it in the Minyan HaMitzvahs, dwelling in Eretz Yisrael, since it's Drabona. Therefore, by a suffix, we should be lenient like any other questionable item of rabbinical source. We are lenient. So we have three opinions in the what the Rambam's opinion is. According to Megillas Esther, it is a commandment, and it's only in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, and it will come back when Mashiach comes. According to the Avnei Nezer, Rambam is the opinion like the Ramban. Even today, it's a mitzvah, and many hold that according to the Rambam, it's only the Rabbona. The Satmarov cites that Menachem Mendel Mevitebsk, who was a Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov, writes that somebody, and the Maggid writes that somebody who doesn't have from what to live from, he will come to live in Eretz Yisrael, even for the desire to go up to Eretz Yisrael, because it's better that he should not go up. And he did go to Eretz Yisrael. And for those who are of the opinion that according to the Rambam, the dwelling in Eretz Yisrael is only rabbinical, we find the language in Halacha Zion that one can dwell in the entire world except for Eretz Mitzrayim. He says, and you can live in the entire world except for Eretz Mitzrayim, except for Egypt, because there's no obligation to go up to Eretz Yisrael. Therefore, that what he says in Halacha Tes, that's forbidden to go from Eretz Yisrael outside of Eretz Yisrael forever, is talking about somebody who's living in Eretz Yisrael. And the Rashbam says that the reason it's forbidden to go out is because he removes from himself the obligation of those mitzvahs which have to do with Eretz Yisrael. And the moment that he'll come back, he's obligated with them. But according to the Ramban, there's an obligation of Torah to live there, and it's not just the obligation of not leaving Eretz Yisrael. According to the Yom Moshe, there's four shitas in the Rishonim regarding Eretz Yisrael. One is the Rambam. It's a mitzvah, a definite mitzvah, a positive commandment, which is always continuous. Rashi, it's not a mitzvah, only a promise. the Rambam, according to the Megillas Esther, and other commentaries, that when the temple is built, it's a mitzvah deraisa. After we were exiled, it's not obligated until Mashiach comes. And today, there are those who say that the Rambam feels it's rabbinically obligated. The Ritva adds that even the forbiddenness to go to Eretz Mitzrayim is only when only when the people of Israel are in Eretz Yisrael. But today, when we have to be elsewhere, there's no forbiddenness to go to Egypt either. The Rabbeinu Chaim writes in Tosfos, there's no mitzvah to live in Eretz Yisrael because there are mitzvahs. There are some mitzvahs that are dependent on Eretz Yisrael, and the punishment that we cannot be careful with them and stand by them. The Ma'arit questions, why can't you keep the mitzvahs where it has to do with Eretz Yisrael? Therefore, he says that the entire time that if there's no danger, there's an obligation to go up to Eretz Yisrael. You shouldn't be worried about that you won't be able to fulfill the mitzvahs, because he's talking about only in a time of danger.